Well, thanks Spurs for ruining my holiday and my birthday week. I've waited a day to make this video because my lividness was borderline murderous. But to be honest, I'm not sure how much it has subsided. The players' refusal to fight and go toe-to-toe at Selhurst Park makes this a hugely pressurised rest of the week for Big Ange. Can he get the 2 wins needed to get us back on track? I'll be discussing that and more in today's episode of the Spurred On podcast. Thanks guys for tuning in. As always, really appreciate your support. Please do press that like button on this video if you like it and subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber for daily Tottenham Hotspur content. And also I'll be bringing you more transfer content as we get closer to the window opening again. And frankly, it looks like Tottenham are going to need some players and certainly someone to add a bit of spine in these away games where we are really struggling. Our away form is just awful, and it seems like that game at Old Trafford was an outlier rather than something we could look forward to regularly to come. I don't know, I feel like I'm not going to say anything here that maybe you haven't all thought yourselves, or that probably didn't make you as Spurs fans as angry as I was. Just an absolute lack of desire, of fight, of commitment in that game against Crystal Palace. And you could see it from the first 5 or 10 minutes. Palace just first in every duel, every 50-50, picking up every second ball. And why would the players expect anything different? This is a team who haven't won in 8 games. They're being, mocked from pillar to post by everybody in football. Oliver Glasner is under pressure for his job, having done such an incredible kind of end of the season last year, where it looked like Palace were going to move up the next level into kind of mid-table towards the top half of the table. And yet they haven't won in 8 games. He's under pressure. And Spurs go there, rock up as if they're just going to be able to roll them over, play their football, play pretty stuff. It doesn't work like that in those games. It just doesn't. And these players, I know they're young, and I talk about them often, don't I? About being young, hungry, exciting group who are going to grow together, playing this exciting front-footed football. But I know it's a cliche, but you have to earn the right to play that football. And you go to these tight little grounds like Crystal Palace, and you think you can just play your football there without having to get stuck in, and you will get rolled over. And that is what happened. Spurs deserved to lose that game 3 or 4-0, I promise you. They did. It deserved to be as bad as it was there under Nuno a few years ago when Emerson Royal made his debut and Tottenham were just dismantled. And it should have been the same. We were lucky that Palace missed a good few chances. Deary, deary me. And something else I want to talk about is, I think what Ange Postecoglou is good at is saying to the players, one of the things he's good at is saying to the players, there's only so much I can give you. I can teach you the way we want to play. I can give you the style of football. But when you go into your changing room and when you cross the white line, it's then up to you. And I have to say, I just don't think Tottenham's players have what it takes when they're on the pitch to make any kind of changes to their style, to have the leadership required, to have someone on the pitch say to them, actually, this is more of a scrap today. This is a battle. We've got to get stuck in. And I'm going to point the finger a little bit at Christian Romero here, because what we know about Christian Romero is he's a World Cup winner. He is an absolute fighter. He's a street fighter. He's a warhorse. And he will have had enough games for Argentina where they have been struggling, and he's known from the other leaders on the pitch and from playing in those atmospheres that things have to change, and you have to put some more reducers in, you have to get some more slide tackles in, some more 50-50 victories, just find ways to turn the momentum around and to make the opposition think, oh, we're in a fight here too. But there was none of that from Spurs at the weekend, and there have been too many occasions actually where there's been none of that from Spurs in games when they suddenly face adversity. And that is something that I really think Tottenham are going to have to learn in a huge way and quickly if they are going to push towards the top 4 rather than be looking as a team as we look now that can absolutely rip people apart at home. But then we go to difficult games away from home, and managers will be saying to their teams, just get in their faces, just get at them, just tackle them hard, just go through them. And in the end, we didn't know how to cope. And one thing that Ange said afterwards that I agree with was that we didn't know how to battle them in the same way that they were battling us. In fact, what he said as well, which was a little confusing, was almost that we got drawn into their style of football or the way they wanted to play the game. Actually, I think we could have got drawn into it more and kind of rolled our sleeves up and said, actually, we're going to fight you here. I have to say, people don't talk about this enough in terms of the Pochettino team, the peak years. We were nasty bastards. We were horrible to play against. We gave away so many professional fouls when needed to. We knew the dark arts. People are having a go at Arsenal at the moment about the dark arts. If you want to battle Man City, if you want to take it to a team who've got, 3 or 4 £100 million players and have spent money on about 30, £50 million players in the last decade, you have to learn other things. You have to know how to take it to teams and go to away grounds and find ways to get results. And the Pochettino team were excellent at that. And we don't have that yet. This young side haven't learned that yet, and they're going to have to learn it quickly. Next thing I'm going to say about it is Vicario's distribution. I love Vicario. I think he's a great shot stopper. But those of you who heard me on We Are Tottenham TV on Sunday will have heard me say, shot stopping for a goalkeeper, minimum requirement. It's the easiest thing to do. It's the thing that's the bread and butter. And Vicario is top level as a shot stopper. But his distribution is not Premier League standard. It really isn't. And he's got to improve that, especially because Ange is absolutely single-minded in not changing the way that we're going to play. So we're going to have moments where we're going to be playing it across our goal line, like we did for their goal. And he wasn't responsible for that. It was actually Romero who I think gave a chip pass to Van der Ven. But I personally think a lot of the nerves that resulted in that and kind of brought the Palace players on for their press, that they continually pressed us so high, is because every time Vicario got the ball, they knew they could just push him onto his left foot and then the nerves would set in and it would be ugly. And that's what it was. And he needs to improve that. I think he's young enough that he can improve that. And it has to happen quickly. I thought Tottenham were absolutely abject going forward. Brennan Johnson and Mikey Moore, they didn't get a kick. Solanke worked so hard. I thought he was the one player who can kind of hold his head up high. His hold-up play was excellent. But we just didn't get involved at all. And I think when things like that happen, when you're struggling in games like that, you've got to do something a bit different. And this is another opportunity I think that the players had to, on the pitch, say, well, this isn't working. Let's do something different. Let's get Pedro Porro in some positions where he can get some long shots in. We know he's got a brilliant long shot. Let's get him in positions 25 yards out when Palace's defence are relatively deep. Get some long shots, because you never know. Like West Ham did against Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last season. They had some long shots, ricocheted a couple of times, broke through for an opportunity at goal, and they scored. We had to try something different. We had no long shots. We've got to improve that. We've got to improve our mentality on the pitch. We've got to learn from these mistakes, and we've got to realise what it takes in adversity to win difficult Premier League games. And by no means am I avoiding responsibility for Big Ange Postecoglou. I think he made a mistake there, and I do think he'll learn from it. And that is, yes, Deki Kulusevski and James Maddison have a lovely partnership together and it's been working. But in those games, in those scrap games against teams fighting for their lives, where you know they're going to put in absolutely 110%, and if you can't break them early, they're the kind of games where basically having two creators in the 8-10 position like that, it's not going to work, and we needed more battle. And frankly, in a game like that, next time he goes to a game like that, I think he should basically play Pape Matar, Rodrigo Bentancur, and one of the other two. I really do. I think we need steel. We need steel mixed with that ability to take the ball on the half turn. And Bentancur was a shoe-in for a game like that. So, I hope Ange will learn from that. Look, you need to find out. And he found out in a big way. I felt so sorry for Mikey Moore. I'm sure you all did too. Wasn't the game to make his first Premier League start for Spurs in. He didn't get a kick, and he looked a bit kind of gutted when he was coming off. And I hope he'll start either against Man City tomorrow night, which obviously now becomes a huge game, and I'll go on to, or at the weekend against Aston Villa, but that seems less likely. Hopefully Sonny and or Odeberg will be back for then. And mentioning Sonny, we missed him. I think we did miss him. He brings something a bit different on the left. He looked fresh when he came on last week, but obviously either picked up another knock or just felt too sore from that game. And we missed him, and we needed a bit more leadership on the pitch. And we didn't have that. In terms of the quotes that came out from Ange Postecoglou, I'll read them to you and tell you what I thought. He said it was a game where we needed to stay composed and not sort of fall into the trap of playing the game the way Palace ultimately wanted to play. It turned into a game that was battle after battle, duels, stop-start. We need to be a lot more clear-headed about how we deal with that rather than fall into the trap of doing what we did today. Well, yeah, he said it turned into a game that was battle after battle, duels, stop-start. What did he expect? What do you expect, Big Ange? This is a London derby. Tottenham have to play so many London derbies, and surely he must know by now that in a lot of those games, it is absolutely cutthroat, and it is duels, and it is scrap. You have to, like I said, earn the right to play the kind of football you want to play. That's why Rodri, who just won the Balon d'Or last night, is so brilliant, because he's an arsehole. He's a beautiful footballer, but when necessary, he'll go through someone. He'll take the professional foul and take his yellow card for it. We're not good enough at that yet. We've got to improve. Ange went on to say, I just felt that when we did have some control over things, we could have dealt with it better. We ended up doing silly things, giving away silly fouls and losing our composure, which just adds up in that sort of game when you can't get any traction. Yeah, that's true. I think we were so... we were suffering so much because Palace were just winning every single battle and every duel and every 50-50 and every second ball, that when we did get on the ball, we were panicked. We didn't know what to do, and we've seen that a lot, haven't we? Spurs kind of looking devoid of ideas when they're under the cosh. It has to change. And it might be that the transfer window is the way to change it. It might be that we need someone with a bit more experience who can come in that 6 role and put his foot in a little bit more. I don't know, let me know what you think in the comments. Is it another situation where we've learned we need a better 6 with a bit more fight? I've seen people say this, and I don't wholly disagree. You want a player like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg in a game like that. Someone who's seen it all, who's done it all, and knows when to put their foot in and knows when to take a foul. And maybe we miss Pierre a little bit in that game, and maybe some of us fans have to take our medicine and say, you know, it's not as simple as just because he's not perfect for the Ange style of play, he's not a good fit for this squad. Sometimes you do need players like him and Eric Dyer who are just going to go through someone and just going to put the opposition on the back foot for a little bit. We had no one in that game, and we missed it. And we're going to have to buy someone who has a mix, I think, of the ability to take the ball on the half turn, but also with the bite and the snap, and someone who can push the opposition onto the back foot because they're like, oh, I don't want to get into a 50-50 with him. Postecoglou went on to say, I think even before the goal, we could have dealt with the situations better, but it was a poor goal and we should do better at that and not concede like that. There were other solutions out there, and again, even in that moment, we didn't have to lose our composure. It just seems we kind of wanted everything to run smoothly, and we know it doesn't, especially in a game like today. There are still ways you can sort of overcome that, but it was a poor goal to concede because the game was always an arm wrestle. It was never going to be one with bags of chances or really open, so to concede like that was disappointing. Yeah, I mean, I guess I know what he's saying. In a game like that, you kind of feel like it's more likely you're going to concede from a set piece, a corner or a cross being thrown in. And actually, that's one of the few positives from Spurs out of that game. It adds to the kind of real belief I have now that this season Tottenham have really improved their set piece defending. And that's brilliant because we were conceding so many goals from set pieces last season. However, we're now finding other ways to lose these games. So something, we have to keep learning, and this learning curve has to improve quickly because Ange is very much 50% win rate at the moment. It's like we're winning the games at home and we're causing people trouble at home. And obviously the Man United game was a really good victory away, but that seems like an outlier. And now United have dealt with that by sacking Erik ten Hag. Looks like they're going to get Ruben Amorim in, maybe. Could be an interesting one that. He'll certainly get them playing in a more attacking style, I'm sure of that. But we need to start winning these games away from home that are against the kind of lower teams as well, that are the difficult ones, the games where you're not going to get the time and space on the ball to open up and play the way you want to play. Not many games are going to be like that game at Villa Park last season where we can just rock up against a team where we think it's going to be a tough game and you're going to roll them over 4-0. It doesn't happen that much in the Premier League, and that's where it's different for Big Ange from some of his work in Japan or some of his work in Australia or at Celtic. No games are easy, and especially not London derbies. London derbies are huge. They mean more to the fans, and you have to win it. You have to win the game, but also first, win every tackle, win every challenge. I don't know. Part of me thinks since that Chelsea game at home last season, where it was almost like we were over-motivated and had 2 men sent off as a result because we were ploughing into tackles, we've almost pulled back on the motivation. Well, I'd say to Ange, get them back to that level of motivation. And sure, if we get a few sendings off, it'll happen. But we'll win more games than we'll lose as a result. Guillermo Vicario said on Instagram after the game, he said, they showed fight and I think we lacked that today. Well, we're all in agreement there, Guillermo. He said, we're disappointed because we have to fight. We play good football, but maybe sometimes we lack the desire to fight. Crystal Palace showed a real desire to fight for something. We lacked a bit of energy and the intensity needs to be better. We have to take this personally and it has to hurt us a lot. Football gives us an opportunity again and we have to be ready for the cup. I agree with him, and that brings me nicely into what I said at the opening of this video, which is this week, the rest of this week, Manchester City at home in the League Cup tomorrow night, and then Aston Villa at home at the weekend, I think is now absolutely huge for Ange Postecoglou, because he needs to show that we are taking these cups as seriously as the fans want us to. Tomorrow night he needs to play Vicario and he needs to play a strong side, and he needs to say to his first team, I need you to play 2 games in 4 days. It's as simple as that. He needs to give that first team an opportunity to make up for the poor result and the poor performance and the lack of desire and the lack of commitment and the lack of fight that they put in at the weekend. Tomorrow night, Man City and Pep Guardiola have said, I'm not going to put any energy behind this game. And that is a mind game. He will put out a mix of some first team players and some reserve team players. But those reserve team players will be people like, if he's fit, Jack Grealish, £100 million. Huge signings, as well as academy products, who are the best academy products in the land, because Man City have been investing in their academy for 20 years and cherry-picking the best players from around the country that they've been able to pay more money to than other academies. So it's going to be difficult, and I'm telling you, I remember enough times back in the Martin Jol era and before, when Tottenham would get drawn against Arsenal in the League Cup and Wenger would play a reserve team, a team of kids, and they would roll over our first team. So we have got to go out and take this game seriously tomorrow. And if we win tomorrow, and if we win against Aston Villa on Saturday, then this game against Crystal Palace will be forgotten, because we will say, well, we've all been calling for Spurs to take the cup seriously because we want to win a trophy. We want to get rid of that hoodoo. So take the game against Manchester City seriously, play your first team, and roll them over. Get a statement victory. Go on to the next round, hopefully get a good draw, and find your way into the semi-finals and the final. That is what we've got to look at now. And I really hope he will. And I'm really trusting in Ange Postecoglou that he's going to make the right decisions here, because there will be ructions. There will be big problems for Ange Postecoglou if he lays out a half and half team, or if he lays out the kind of team he put out against Coventry and we get turned over by Man City's reserve team tomorrow night. There will be problems for him, and it will ramp up the pressure so much for him against Aston Villa. And I have to say, we know Daniel Levy. We know that once the opportunity of top 4 goes, he gets an itchy trigger finger, and he's looking around and wondering, is there somebody who I could bring in who might be able to get a bounce back like Antonio Conte got for us, a bounce back that could potentially change things around enough to take us into those top 4 places and the money that brings into the club. I don't want Ange Postecoglou to leave this club. I want him to get the time to complete his project. But Daniel Levy does not often give managers time, so Ange has to be careful tomorrow night. And I think this is a huge rest of the week for him. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. What team should he play? Do you agree with me that it's absolutely huge and now a big pressurised week? I haven't done a video because I was away on holiday since the 1-0 win against AZ in the Europa League. Just wanted to talk a little bit about it. I know it's hard because so much has happened since, so I'll kind of race through it a little bit. But I thought Fraser Forster made a couple of important saves, which kind of unexpected to me. But once again, I'd say about Forster, he's still a half decent shot stopper, but he does get down a bit slower than he used to, for sure. But I personally think the reason he picked Fraser Forster against AZ is because he said to him, you're going to play against AZ, but you won't play against Man City in the League Cup. And I'm hopeful that that's the reason. I thought Archie Gray looked pretty good. Again, a solid ball player, playing out of his natural position. And at his age, he's coming on really strongly. I really like him. Dragushin against AZ, another chance for him to impress, but As quite a few people in the podcast that I really rate, for instance, Windy at the Extra Inch, he always says he doesn't think that Dragoshin is strong enough on the ball, and I have to agree with him. He doesn't look like a natural Ange player on the ball, but what I would say, he's still very young, isn't he? 22, 23, I think. So I think his ability with the ball will improve, and also the lack of rhythm that he's got from not playing enough games means that when he comes in, he's not quite there with his ability on the ball. He just made a few mistakes. I thought Lucas Bergvall had his best game for Spurs, competitive game since pre-season, and that was good to see. I love Bergvall, you know I do. Richarlison, obviously, glad he got his goal. Don't think he should be fighting the captain for penalties like that. It should be the captain's decision, and James Maddison, I think, made a good decision in the end. But that could have been very, very ugly indeed. Mikey Moore was obviously absolutely the man of the match, and again, a stunning performance from him. So exciting to see him driving at the teams, but now got to keep his feet on the ground. I think maybe Ange put him in against Crystal Palace because he was forced a little bit. His hands were tied. Son was injured. Odegaard was injured. So it was him or Timo Werner. And after Werner's really, again, horrific performance against AZ, I think he had to play Mikey Moore, really. I'll double down on what I said. I thought it was the wrong game for him to start against Crystal Palace, but I'm sure he'll start against Man City tomorrow night and put in a good performance. About Timo Werner, like I said, horrible performance, but actually I thought he looked kind of bright when he came on against Crystal Palace, although that might have been just comparatively to just the horrible performances from the rest of the team. Ange gave some quotes after that AZ game about where he feels Spurs are at the moment. Obviously that have been tarnished a little bit after the Palace game, but in terms of the bigger picture, it's probably worth discussing a little bit. He said, I feel like we're a lot different to last year. I think we're more consistent in our football, more consistent in performances. Ironic after what happened on Saturday, of course. But this is hindsight, easy to say. He said, results last year were great and playing on a lot of enthusiasm and energy we had, but I knew that wasn't sustainable. And pretty quickly, we found that out. He also talked about Mikey Moore. He said he's ready to start any game. With young players, you've got to be really careful about their introduction into senior football. Even last year, he didn't really have a full season of football. He had a couple of injuries and went from playing under 18s to very little under 21s before we integrated him to the first team. He's still physically growing, and you have to take that into account. I'm glad that Ange brought that up because that's vital. You really can injure young players pretty badly and for long lengths of time if you don't allow them to grow, if you try and throw them in too early. He said he's ready to start Premier League games, but for us it's about developing him in the right way and giving him the platform to keep improving. So far, with whatever we've asked of him, he's made a real impact, and the plan is to continue to do that. And I think tomorrow night against Man City, a lot of people will be watching that game, and Pep will be there, obviously, and it will be a huge opportunity for Mikey Moore to show what he's all about at home with an entire full house behind him in a huge game for Tottenham Hotspur. So I'm very excited to see that. Ange also talked a little bit about Timo Werner. He said he was asked about the idea that Timo Werner's doing all the things except the end product well. He said, yeah, he is, but at the same time, we do need output, and that's the key part. Last night, obviously, when Mikey was on with Brennan, that's talking about in the AZ game, we were a threat on both wings and we were getting outcomes from it. We didn't score, but 3 or 4 really good chances came from it. And we need that to happen with the way we play. Whilst the general play is important and Timo has done well, we still need more in that front third, and we got it in the second half. Well, what I'd say about that is I think that is basically the first shot across the bows from Ange Postecoglou to Timo Werner saying, I will be ruthless with you if I have to be, and if you do not improve your ability in front of goal and your final ball, you will be out and your loan will be ended. So Werner, I'm afraid, and I like him as a bloke, I've said that, and I feel sorry for him, but he has to start producing, otherwise he will be out. And of course, we've got the young Korean talent coming in January as well, who can play on both sides, and Odegaard coming back from his injury too. So not much time for Werner to try and impress. He was asked also, Big Ange, about Werner's confidence levels. He said, we're talking to Timo constantly, and we have, not just me, but the coaching staff. We understand he's lacking confidence, and everyone has been working hard with that. But with all these things, ultimately, it's incumbent on him to use as much of the support he's got around here to get himself out of it. Our role in that is to provide that support, whether that's internally or externally, whatever he needs. Obviously, it's then up to him to try to use that to get him back to the levels where he wants to be and where he can contribute to us. Like I said, with all the players, what we try to do is provide an environment where should they need help, it's readily available. I think it's a similar thing He's basically saying to Timo Werner, you've got one last chance. Do you agree, or has he wasted his last chance? Let me know in the comments. Let's have a chat about it. All talk about it. I think Werner is really struggling with his Tottenham career here, and I can see it being the end relatively soon unless something happens for him. Unless the next time he gets a chance, he manages to score a really important goal for him. One thing I would say about Werner, and I think about this quite a lot, if he could score a one-on-one at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium when everyone, when he gets it, is expecting him not to, the reaction he would get from the crowd would be monumental. It would be like a goal in a cup final. That's how huge the reaction would be, and that would, I think, give him incredible confidence. So I just want that to happen for him. I really do, and I hope it does. Last thing I'm going to talk about last night, guys, before I go, is last night was obviously the Balon d'Or, and I'm sure you saw how Real Madrid decided to not let any of their players or staff go because they were so upset that they'd found out that Vinicius Jr. wasn't going to win the Balon d'Or and that Rodri did. And as a result, Richarlison, in sticking up for his Brazilian teammate, has gone a little bit haywire. Here is a quote from something he said, I think in an interview or maybe on his Instagram last night. He said, "All of us who live in football look forward to individual awards with great anxiety every season. Today, all Brazilians who love soccer woke up expecting to see another player from our country winning an award for the best in the world after so long. Unfortunately, by criteria that no one can understand, the prize did not come. And don't get me wrong, Rodri is a hell of a player who deserves to be among the best. But Vinny not taking this Ballon d'Or was embarrassing, and the only one who lost today was football. I remember Vinny saying that his dream was to see the whole of Brazil rooting for him, and that day was today. You're a giant and the best in the world, kid, and no trophy will change that. Go ahead and never shut up. We're together." Now, I know I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to this stuff, but what the hell is Richarlison talking about? This is like, it's just a personal award. I know a lot of younger fans care more about individual players and individual awards and team stuff, but that's not what it's all about. And he talks about ultimately by criteria that no one can understand. I'm pretty sure, unless somebody tells me I'm wrong, the criteria is loads of coaches and journalists from around the world and players are asked to give their vote for it, aren't they? That's how it works. So the criteria is your peers are voting for who they think the best in the world is. And if it wasn't Vinicius Jr., that's because it's a really fair democratic system of who they think is the best player in the world. So I think Richarlison has gone a bit nuclear and mental there, and I'm not sure why. Just sticking up for his teammate, I guess, which, you can understand to some degree. But for me, I just don't see the point of the Ballon d'Or being so huge. It should be about team awards, and it should just be about who can get the teams playing the best. Before I go, I guess I'll just mention this about Man United and Ruben Amorim a bit more as well. He is an exciting coach, and obviously recently Man City replaced their sporting director, the ex-Barcelona sporting director who brought Pep in, with Viana, who was the sporting director at Sporting Lisbon. So with Pep either going to leave this summer or maybe doing an extra year before he leaves, I think they had in mind to take Amorim next, and Man United are trying to beat them to the punch. The thing I'd say about Ruben Amorim is, and I'm mainly talking about this because I'm interested in Man United as a bigger picture thing, because I think Tottenham and Man United are swimming in the same waters at the moment. Not commercially, obviously. Man United bring a lot more money in, and they're a traditionally bigger club, and better players will go to them because they can pay more wages. But in terms of where we are as a club, we're in similar waters, but I think Tottenham are further ahead with their project, despite that Crystal Palace performance. But when Amorim comes in, what I'd say when I look at him is, well, you've won the title a couple of times at Sporting Lisbon, and you've played a good style of play there. But Erik ten Hag had done the same at Ajax, which is a similar standard league, similar budget of club, with a similar kind of history. In fact, if anything, Ajax maybe, because they've won more European Cups, bigger history. But probably in terms of the budgets and the wages they pay, similar club. The difference is that Erik ten Hag at Ajax had got them to a Champions League semi-final, where of course they were beaten over two legs by Spurs. But Amorim hasn't had that at Man United. So all I'm saying is, in terms of their previous abilities, previous records, maybe the players at Man United will say, well, what have you really done that gives you permission to tell us what to do? And that's what I really felt was the issue at Manchester United, where they've got huge egos in terms of their players. They're earning so much money, some of them £300,000 a week. And those egos say to managers who come in, not to their faces, but are thinking and saying to their teammates, well, what have they done? So what I think Amorim will need to have, and this is where he will need to be different to Ten Hag, he will need to have the personality to go to those players, trust in me. Similar to Ange, actually. Maybe I don't have the background in the very top leagues or in the Champions League to prove to you that I'm the right man to tell you what to do. But I have the personality to get it across to you and make you like me. Whereas I think Ten Hag never really had that. I think he was more kind of school teacher vibes. And I think the Man United players just never bought into it. So I think it's a bit of a knife edge appointment. He is an exciting one. And obviously I think the fans will be happy if they get him to beat Man City to the punch. But it's no kind of huge name like Zidane or an Ancelotti or someone like that. And I have to say, and I know United fans would not think of this as an exciting appointment, but I think Thomas Frank is a really good manager. And similar to the way that Spurs fans, when we got Pochettino, maybe were a bit like underwhelmed by it because he'd only managed Southampton. What I like about Frank is when he got Brentford up from the Championship, he was playing this beautiful style of football. And when he got up into the Premier League, he was like, well, we don't have the players to immediately play that style of football. So he changed it, went more direct. Horses for courses. And he showed that he's a good enough coach to play different styles. And then as Brentford have managed to get more impressive younger talent in, they've kind of changed again to a kind of mix of direct and good football. And I think a coach like that is someone that United need, someone who can really train them, but also be like, well, do I have exactly the right players to play this football quite yet? But that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments about all the stuff we've talked about. It's been quite a long episode. Hope you've really enjoyed it. But like I said, been on holiday, had a good time over in Barcelona, and obviously then Spurs ruining it, and my birthday, which was yesterday, by that horrible defeat at Crystal Palace. But I'm hopeful. I'm back on the front foot. I'm back positive that we can turn Man City over tomorrow, get that statement win, and then go into that Villa game at the weekend and beat them and put some pressure back on those kind of top 4 positions in the league. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Do press that like button if you haven't already. Please do subscribe to the channel and come and listen to me on the audio platforms as well every day. The Spurred On podcast, type it into your Spotify search or Apple Podcasts. Come and listen over there as well. Have a great rest of your day. Cheers.